Chapter 1. The Great Alone. The most terrible poverty is loneliness and the feeling of being unloved. Mother Teresa of Calcutta. On January 26, 2014, at New York City's Presbyterian Hospital, Pete Seeger lay dying. The 94-year-old iconic singer and composer of If I Had a Hammer and Where Have All the Flowers Gone had been the face of folk music and social commentary since the day he dropped out of Harvard in 1938 to ride his bicycle across the country. When the phone rang, it was Arlo Guthrie, son of his old friend Woody. Pete and Arlo had played many concerts together all over the country. After the call, he posted this to Facebook. I simply wanted him to know that I loved him dearly, like a father in some ways, a mentor in others, and just as a dear friend a lot of the time. At 3 a.m. on January 27th, Pete breathed his last. He died a man known and loved. Who wouldn't want that? No rational person would choose to die alone or unloved. Nothing could be emptier than that. Between us, Ruth and I have lived in California, Oregon, India, Missouri, Illinois, Washington, D.C., and now Colorado. We have met thousands of people and invested thousands of dollars in homes, cars, causes, travel, children, grandchildren, food, and a myriad of other things. We've discovered something in our nearly 150 combined trips around the sun. Apart from the great ideas that move us, life revolves around two things: relationships and money. And only one of those makes us rich. When we say, boy, she had a rich life, we're not talking properties or portfolios. Those things can evaporate overnight. What creates real wealth is friendship. A rich life shows up in a phone call to a dying man, letting him know one more time how much he is cared for. The question is, how do we begin to build that kind of friendship? You'd think it would begin with knowing what we want, but sometimes we move forward by knowing what we don't want. When my parents divorced in the early 1960s, I had a choice to make. I could submit to my fear, which entertained the idea that the patterns leading to the collapse of their marriage were genetic, which meant that I must expect what happened to them to happen to me. Or I could do something else. I could say to myself, whatever I need to do not to end up there, that's what I want. I think we respond to many traumas that way. Disoriented, our emotions shattered, we say, whatever we need to do, never to let that happen again. Let's do that. We frame a positive action from a negative experience. We say no to the thing that steals life and yes to the thing that gives it. From negative to positive. Is God doing that very thing when he uses not in the first pages of the Torah? The grand sweep of design, covenant, and truth are all there and worthy studies in themselves. The Genesis account is punctuated 6 times with the phrase, "It was good." The last verse of chapter 1 even says, God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. But 18 verses later, in chapter 2, the subject of relationship is brought into focus with this sentence: It is not good for the man to be alone. Adam has been created from the dust of the earth and the breath of life. Chapter 2, verse 7. He looks good and whole, but Yahweh says, in effect, we're not done yet. So Eve is created. Together, they reflect who God is. Here's the deal. It is clear that relationship existed before Adam and Eve. God was always about relationship. When he says, let us make man in our image, he's talking about relationship, which is in the very DNA of the Creator. So when we hear it is not good for the man to be alone, our gut says, aha, that's true. But why tell us what we are not created for? Because it's simply impossible to misunderstand those 10 words. It is not good